Well, good morning, Todd.
Good morning, Laura. What have you been up to?
Well, mostly just thinking about kind of the fact that we live across the United States from each other, and it makes me really sad. So I love it when we do these because then I get to see your face and we get to hang out.
Woohoo!
So yeah, I mean, other than that, I got to this past, or I guess that was yesterday. I did my first dance lesson. So,
How did that go?
I'm on my, well, it went. I was a little bit hungover. So there's that. The guy, Scott, my, not to be confused with our guest for today, but Scott, my teacher, is a fantastic guy. But I had to tell him, I had to warn him beforehand. I was like, listen, I'm not normally this bad, and I probably don't smell great. So just let's do this. But he was so go with the flow. We did some salsa. We did some, all the different kinds of cha-cha.
You're
And
picking it up quickly?
Yeah. I mean, I had a little bit of
The hangover?
yeah, I mean, considering, I think, I got into the groove. It was a lot of just trying to get movement and hearing the songs that I like. And I really want to do like a Halsey song. So he was super into that. But, we're not allowed to technically do anything like choreography or any of that for another 3 or 4 weeks. So it was.
Listeners, Laura is participating in Dancing with the Stars in Charleston. There is a local version of this, and they're pretty much kicking their asses into shape.
I hope they do, because I mean that's I really want to be like beat up in this. Like I want to get like where people are throwing sandwiches at me, like eat a sandwich. You look too skinny. Like that is my main goal with this. But the secondary goal is to raise money for the American Lung Association. So that's my biggest focus right now, is getting people to buy tickets, to donate. If anybody wants to, you can go to the American Lung Association page and vote for me by giving a small donation. The winners are not decided by talent. And that is actually a very comforting thing for me, that it's...
It's all for
that
charity,
they will not
guys.
be judging it. Apparently, if there's a tie, then they start judging your technique. But we don't. Hopefully, won't have to worry about that.
Well, how did you enjoy this interview with Scott?
Per usual, thought it was extremely educational. I learned a lot as far as all the other conditions I probably have now that I was not aware of. Just kidding. That's
Blown away by his social media following. I mean, that's incredible.
I mean, it's nuts. And then I guess to me, it's always fascinating that people that are operating at such a high level, are still struggle with things like imposter syndrome. Like that is still a thing. So, I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy not only his humor and his wit, but like kind of the things that he's had to deal with going into all of this. So I think it was a really good interview.
Shall I tell our listeners about him a little bit?
Yeah, that would probably help.
Okay, so Scott Evan Davis is a New York City-based composer and lyricist. After working as an actor around the country, he began composing in 2010 and since then has gained widespread recognition in the worlds of musical theater and cabaret. Scott has performed concerts and song cycles of his music at New York City venues such as Birdland, Duplex, Don't Tell Mamas, as well as in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center and in Los Angeles. He has performed concerts internationally in London, Dublin, and Australia. Currently, Scott is developing his first full-length musical called Indigo with Sing Out Louise Productions. The show is about a nonverbal girl with autism who teaches everyone around her how to truly communicate. I think this is going to be such an amazing, amazing musical. And also, if you want to check him out on TikTok, he has about 500,000 followers as Scott Evan Davis as the Prince of Snarkness. So, I mean, he's just great.
Yeah, without further ado, we introduce Scott. Good morning.
Welcome, Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Hello.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing really, really great. It's a nice, easy day. How are you?
Good. We just wanted to thank you so much for being not only a guest, but our tech support today.
My pleasure.
We had some issues and Scott helped us, which is, always good to have somebody who knows what they're doing on here.
Especially when you spend 30 hours of your week on Zoom. You get really used to it.
Yeah, I would think that we would be closer to that level of understanding. But, this is a growing process. We're learning.
Don't worry, in about a year or two, we're all just hologram into each other's living room. We won't need to do anything.
Any of this. This is all, very basic compared to how it's going to work at some point, hopefully. but we are so thrilled to have you on. I know that you're a friend of Todd's. Tell me a little bit, or tell all of us a little bit of how you guys met and what your journey was in composing and writing.
I was thinking about that before coming on, and Todd, I can't remember exactly how we met or when we met.
It was probably at some piano bar or something.
I think it was the Duplex.
It was probably the Duplex, yeah. Hey, Just Jack. Yeah. I think that was it. It must have been, it was in New York.
Yeah, old New York stomping grounds. I used to go out a lot.
Really?
I'm too old. Yeah.
Well, I mean, then there was the pandemic, so what are you gonna?
Well, I'm talking about, I used to go out in my, mid-20s. I'm 44 now, so I think the last time I've been out, it's been a long time. I'm a homebody. I like to stay home.
So the pandemic was good for you then?
It was a dream come true in every way.
Yeah, I can imagine. I have a friend who's a introvert, and we're all crying at our offices, just what are we gonna do? And she's like, I'm living my best life.
Yeah. I mean, this is real quick, and this is just a silly little thing, but years ago when I was in, again, my early 20s, I was like, I really want to teach voice lessons. I wasn't even teaching voice lessons, but I knew that I wanted to at some point. And I said, and Skype had just been invented. This is true. Skype had just come out, and I bought the website domain name scoaching.com because I said my dream would be just to sit in front of my computer and teach. Everybody thought I was nuts. Flash forward to 2020. This is where I spend my time, teaching virtually.
So joke's on everybody else.
Joke's on everybody else.
You've actually invented all of this, I think. You manifested it.
I manifested it, exactly.
Exactly. Well, lovely to hear that y'all have no idea how you know each other. So going back from that, tell us a little bit about your background. Have you always been in the arts? When did you start, doing what you're doing now? How, just the whole shebang.
I was a really unique little child. And before I ever found theater, I was training to be a professional bowler when I was 12. This is true. I used to go on Saturdays to Atlantic City and train with this professional bowler because bowling used to be on Saturdays. And
You're serious?
I'm serious. I was on 4, this isn't sarcasm, I was on 4 different leagues. My grandfather was a great bowler, and it was just something that I loved. And then I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I started drawing. I was very good. I liked doing that a lot. And then I found theater, and I sort of did my first show, and I really just wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on Broadway. And I was an actor up until I was 30. All my training was acting and musical theater in school. I taught myself to play the piano when I was 11. I never really had a piano lesson, but I just got obsessed with learning how to play for whatever reason. And so I always played throughout my whole life, but writing or being a composer was never something that I wanted until much, much later. So I was 30 and then everything sort of changed. I've done everything. I've been a mutual fund investment specialist, a waiter, everything, you name it, I've been.
Renaissance man. I kind of like to think of myself as that person. Some people might see it as not focused, but I like to consider it, that I can do multiple things. So if you need me, just slide me right in there.
Right. You call it Renaissance man. I call it ADHD.
ADHD, yes. That is.
We heard in one of your interviews, Scott, that you literally started composing after you had a dream. Can you elaborate on that?
Of course. In a concise way. I went to 2 different schools. I went to Emerson College in Boston because I was sort of paying for everything on my own, and I couldn't really afford that particular school at Emerson, and I ended up coming back to New York and sort of waiting tables and figuring it out. And then I went to AMDA, the American Musical Dramatic Academy. And I literally was working at the Olive Garden in Times Square full-time and trying to pay my own way at 18. And I was just working all through the night. And I was trying to go to this conservatory, which was literally 9 to 5 every day.
You went there. I went there too.
Are you serious? That's how we met. No,
that's maybe how we met.
We figured it out.
We went to school. No, I didn't know you went to AMDA.
You were my teacher? That was you.
When did y'all go? When was each one of you there?
I went in 1847, and when Todd did you go?
It was 18.
I think it was 1998 and 1999 that I was there.
Okay, I was there in 2003. 2003.
Oh.
Y'all just missed each other by 5 years.
Well, then maybe you know who I'm talking about
15
because
years.
This might be interesting for you. So Brian Ashinger, who was a teacher there, was my teacher. And he sort of took a special liking to me early on, and he thought I was really talented, and you feel that from a teacher. You feel like when you know that they're appreciating you. But I kept falling asleep And one particular day I fell asleep, and he kind of came over to me afterwards, and he says, "What are you doing? I'd love to take you to lunch." And we went to a diner right around the corner, and we talked, and I basically like unloaded everything that was, I mean, I'm not going to go into it here, but I was going through a lot of things, and most of them were financial and working a lot. And I just sort of unloaded. And he then told me that something that, because I kind of was very open, and he appreciated that. And he said, "Well, something that nobody knows about me at this school, and I would love for you to not, tell anyone, is that I have cancer, and I may only have a year to live or 2 years to live." And I said, okay. So now we sort of had this bond, and we started building a friendship, and that eventually one of his solutions was, so that I didn't have to work so much, he lived out in New Jersey, and he had this big house, and he was sick a lot. And so it was just one of the, God, it was a different time, but it was just one of those Tuesdays with Maury's thing where he invited me to come live there. In payment, or in a balance, he would sort of coach me on acting and acting through a song. And so I would sit in the hospital with him during chemo, and he would like work on my song. And it was that kind of a relationship. And it lasted for about 10 months. And then I was in a relationship with someone in Boston still, from when I was going to school in Boston. And I was really sort of obsessed with that. That was all that mattered to me. Love was so crucial, and everything else was sidelined. I was also 19 years old, isolated in this house in a sense, and sort of feeling I just didn't know what, so I basically told him that I was going back to Boston, and it sort of broke his heart. We never spoke again. And then 2 years later, I was living in Boston. I was a mutual fund investment specialist. I was not doing theater, and I wrote him a letter to apologize, because I was also single because the relationship had ended, and he never got it because he had passed away. So that's sort of the backstory about my unresolved feeling, because I knew that he died angry or upset with sort of how I handled everything. Years later, I was an actor. I was doing an off-Broadway play called Joy, directed by Ben Rimmelauer. I think Ben Curtis
Oh my
was in
God,
it, and January
yeah.
Lavoie. And I was in another sort of very tumultuous place in my life, and I was not happy at all, which was ironic since the show was called Joy, but I had none. And I had a dream, and in the dream, Brian was sitting on a park bench, and he looked completely healthy and happy, and I felt like he was going to forgive me, and he had his arms outstretched, and he had his hair, because he had lost his hair, and he hugged me, and as he was hugging me, he started to hum. And he kept repeating those two bars like over and over. And then in the dream, he didn't like let the hug go, and I started to not being able to breathe, and it became sort of a dark experience. And then I thought he was trying to kill me. It was a very strange dream. And I woke up the next day. I couldn't get the melody out of my head. And again, I wasn't writing anything. I played, but all day long I was thinking about it. When I got home from work, I sat at the piano, played it out, and that became my first song, which became the title of my first album, which I dedicated to him. And I've been a composer ever since.
I just got goosebumps.
I
That's
know.
the truth.
So I was listening to an interview you did yesterday about that, and I was walking my dog, and I literally just like stopped and was like, what are the odds? Because it's also called Cautiously Optimistic, which I feel like is very appropriate for like, you're going into something you've never done before, but you feel like you were kind of given permission to do it.
I feel like we have moments in our lives where if you're sort of, I don't know, if you're aware of certain consciousness, I think, personally, that's how I feel. I think that you can start to draw lines about things and why things actually happen. And I do believe that once he died, he sort of was able to gear me towards what my ultimate purpose was. Because in life, I think he was trying to help me with my purpose, but it wasn't what my authentic purpose really was, but who could know? And I think he had a greater understanding when he died, and that was his last gift to me.
That's beautiful. I think. Yeah, I mean, that's, I think that there's lots of reasons that people go into things, but that is, a very special story, I feel like, at least.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I really appreciated sort of all of that. And I don't think I expected when it started to happen that that's what I was going to do, but I knew the second I started writing songs, I sort of knew that's where my happy place was.
Awesome. Well, so as you were answering that question and we heard these sirens going on in the background, I'm sure everybody's kind of aware that you live in New York City.
I do. I live in Harlem, New York City.
Yeah. How do you like it there?
It's good. I've actually been in this building for 13 years.
You haven't left
different
once,
apartments.
actually.
And I've never left. I don't know what the
Yeah.
outside looks like. I think it's Harlem. could be Utah for all
They
I know. I don't know.
redistricted. It's all different now.
Exactly. It's high rises. And no, I really do enjoy it. I love this apartment and I love the building I live in. But I haven't really been able to leave New York.
And you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I've never wanted to. I have never brought, it's come up a few times in my life, but I have to be here. And I'm glad because this is where Broadway is. I need to be here.
Exactly. Yeah, it makes the most sense, actually.
Yeah.
And I know that you work a lot from home and virtually with some of your students and stuff like that. So the pandemic, you were forced to stay at home. How did it affect your career and your life as a whole, professionally and personally?
I feel like I'm going to get hate for this. And I don't mean it in any way towards anybody else because I know how hard this has been, especially for people in the arts industry. I have never been happier when the pandemic hit. I mean, other than, I've been sick and, that sort of fear, which is no fun and a million other things. But just the idea of working virtually. So when the pandemic hit, I had sort of inside information about how intense it was going to get, only because my husband was in meetings for, his business and was coming home with information that I don't think that I would have had. And it really was something where I sort of knew, okay, Thursday, March 2020, this is the last time I'm going to be going to get pizza for a while. And I remember sitting down and getting a slice of pizza. I had gotten a call from him and he was like, go to the grocery store, buy a ton of food, go home. And I said, I just finished teaching. I used to go to people's apartments and teach and go to rehearsals and things. And
no more of that.
I did. I sat at my favorite pizza place and I just looked around and I went home and that was it. But I get obsessive about certain things. And when this started to happen, instead of not working, I took all of my students that I currently had and pretty obsessively for the first month taught myself how to video edit. I taught myself the programs I would need. How do I create a virtual studio that was completely in real time? It took a while, but so I just scheduled all my students for the following week virtually. And I've never really stopped, and then of course the social media side of it has changed my whole life. And that happened sort of because of the pandemic and wanting to have more of a digital presence, I guess, that I didn't have. So I don't know. I think I'm one of those people that sort of thrived through it, which, I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, I don't think you have to feel guilty that you had some positive things. I mean, that's kind of the whole premise of this show is that
I'm gay and Jewish. I'm feeling guilty as a personality trait.
Oh yeah, well then we can't help that. But I think in general that it is nice to hear that things came out of this that were positive.
Yes.
I think we can all kind of think of things that became a little bit better as a result of it. We can have Zoom meetings. We don't have to sit in a conference room and brave traffic for nonsense.
I agree.
And so I think it kind of got people's priorities in order. But I think this is the perfect time to discuss why you say that your career took off so much during that time, because you became basically a TikTok celebrity, kind of like, I wouldn't say kind of, like you are a TikTok celebrity. And I've only seen, I'm still learning how to use TikTok. So I've seen them on Instagram, but could you tell all of our listeners kind of like how that process came about?
For those of our listeners who need to go check him out, you have over almost 500,000 followers combined with TikTok and Instagram, right? And Facebook?
No, I have 500,000. I haven't counted, but let me tell you exactly.
Yeah, let me check the data.
Who's counting? It's about 500,000 on TikTok and about 200,000 on Instagram.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Divulge, sir.
And I was watching Drag Race on Friday night, and right when the winners were going to be, at the end of the challenge, I started getting tagged like a lot on TikTok, which happens. And it was just, Selena Gomez used your sound. Selena Gomez used your sound. Selena Gomez, just everybody was tagging. I was like, what are you talking about? I said, pause this. And like 20 minutes before that, like Selena Gomez, who has 34 million followers, she had used and lip synced to one of my sounds and it tagged me in it and stuff. And that was really kind of wild because I've had celebrities, use my sound, Dorinda from Housewives, things like that, Alyssa Milano, but she was like the biggest one. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that brought me a lot of attention.
Yeah, you had like, when I went to check it, it was like 15,000 likes, and I'm sure that is like times 1,000 now. So, I mean,
Laura texted me. She was like, you do realize that this just happened today.
Like, I was so excited for you that I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, it was really funny. Oh, you mean on Instagram? Yeah, it was viewed.
Yes.
But anyway, I was deep into, when the pandemic hit, I was creating a virtual studio, really depressed. I mean, I say I was thriving, but I have a musical that I've written called Indigo, which had just had its like fourth pre-Broadway workshop, and the next step was doing a show at a theater, and literally the pandemic hit. And I was pretty convinced, as we all probably were, that all of our prospects that we currently had were gone, and it was a rebirth in some way. And it was a very, I'm in therapy because of it, but it was a very sort of grieving process for me because I wasn't convinced it was ever going to really happen. We'll talk more about that later.
Yes.
I was home. I was sort of focused on teaching, and I said, well, what can I do to continue to make money and be successful? Because that was the biggest concern. I have a lot of negative attachments to finances, and, I didn't want to be back in a place that, it was irrational in a sense, but that's where it was. So I was lying in bed one night, and my husband, who was, on TikTok, I was not. I'd never been on it. I didn't know what it was. And he was just like laughing, and I just kept getting fooled. I remember he was showing me, and I remember being like, oh, hi, that guy has such a good voice. He was like, no, that's not his voice. He's lip syncing. Oh. And then it was like somebody else saying something funny. I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. It's like, no, their lips. Oh, okay. And in my mind, I just said, how? What do you do? I don't get it. How are you doing it? Everyone's a video editor? I don't get it. Yeah. And so what I did was I said, okay, well, a lot of my younger students probably are on TikTok, so let me figure out TikTok to really push my music and to push my studio and my business in that way, singing and piano. And I just didn't, that's not why I like TikTok. I started laughing, and I said, I want to be funny. So I was like, I want to do lip syncs. I used to be an actor. I want to do it. And so I loved the Golden Girls. And if you scroll back far enough on my TikTok, my first month or two of content was, I was like doing scenes.
I remember
scenes
that.
Golden Girls, where I was like transitioning from each character. And I loved it. But the thing was, I am one of those creatures of habit where I have to, I'm all or nothing. There's no happy medium with me. It's like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And that's why it's hard for me to start things, because I know how exhaustive I'll make it. But I started doing it every day, and I said, I can't possibly take 2 hours of my morning every morning to learn, film, do all these things. And so I said, there has to be an easier way to make people laugh. But I like making people laugh. I really did. I thought it was fun. And so I started saying funny things. And then I realized how much I talk with my hands, and I said, this is ridiculous, I need a prop. So I went to my closet, and I got I had these coffee mugs, which I had never collected before. It was never something I thought of. But when you watch yourself do videos every day holding something, you're like, oh, nope, it needs to match with what I'm wearing. I don't like the way that looks. Nope, I need to have a different cup every day. Nope, I'm going to get bored. And that's like the obsessive thinking where that whole thing started. And I sort of gradually launched into this B. Arthur delivery of sarcasm, which I respond to. And then organically the eyebrow started to work, and it just became a thing. And one day, I think I had I went from no followers to a couple thousand on TikTok, and someone was like, oh my God, you're the Prince of Snarkness. And I laughed for 5 minutes. I said, that's hysterical. And I said, I'm stealing it. So I started I created the hashtag Prince of Snarkness, which I was the only person to ever use it on TikTok. It has 50 million views now. 50 million views as the hashtag on TikTok. And it just became a thing. And I sort of just started doing it every day. But the funny part is, the humor of it all really, because I started going live a lot and talking and getting people to just know who I am a little bit. And I had a lot to say. And I think it became one of those things where it organically filtered into my music. And I started showing people my music, because for a long time before that, everybody on social media knew I was a composer, because there was a small group of people that followed me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They knew me. And I went from like hardly any followers to a ton, and I just had to reintroduce myself as a human, I think, into a digital world. And that's sort of where I am.
And we'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors.
Eternus is all about you. Eternus Life Coaching is all about partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. Eternus believes in making your dreams and goals a reality, and their coaches know just how to do that. Whether you're just starting out or looking to bolster your current transformation, they have you covered. Leveraged by the International Coaching Federation and founded by Chris Wingater, Eternus coaches develop and maintain an effective coaching plan with attainable results. Eternus offers flexible plans and rates to allow all people to benefit from this rewarding creative process. So don't hesitate. If you want to unlock your full potential, begin your journey with Eternus Coaching today. Visit www.eternuslife.com and let Eternus help you manage progress and maintain accountability in achieving your highest potential. Follow them on Instagram and Twitter at Eternus Life. We were talking about this yesterday. I mean, yes, it is kind of a B. Arthur type character that you're doing, because you, Scott, are one of the nicest, sweetest, not snarky humans in the world. So it was just to see you do this. It's just so funny. I'm so glad you're doing it.
Y'all seen the Kermit the Frog, like where he's drinking tea and looking out of the window, and he's just like, well,
Yes.
you know, basically like, I don't like what that person's doing, but that's none of my business. And it kind of reminds me of that, but in like a much more direct, like, you know, you get to gaze into Scott's eyes while he says, have you ever thought about people and hated them?
My whole thing is, I just think that as humans, we are all so remarkably alike that we always focus on the things that make us different. We always focus on our beliefs, our politics, which is very important, and we have to have that discord. But sometimes it's really healthy to look at another human and say, you know what I hate about humans? And it's things that we all do. It's things that we all do. And I think it's relatable because we all sort of have certain beefs with how crazy people are.
Yeah.
But us too. It's you know what I mean? So I think that's fun for me. And you know, I am snarky. I am sarcastic. I've always deflected with humor. Always. And I'm just not mean or cruel. And
You would never actually drop a toaster into a bathtub.
I mean, I wouldn't. I wouldn't post about it.
I know that would be very incriminating, but you know, we've all thought about it.
Right. And I think it's a role, and it's an outlet for me to, you know, to have different facets to my personality. You know, some people call that
That's awesome.
sociopathic. I call it humor.
Exactly. As
No.
long as you're not hurting anybody with it, then
Not yet.
sociopathic stuff is totally fine.
Scott, you have a show coming up called Connections Unstable, and it's described as such on your page. Quote, sitting at the piano with a host of talented singers, Scott will tell personal stories while incorporating new songs as well as old. This show explores the human condition, what drives us, and how we use communication in a new era.
Who wrote that?
Kind of what this whole podcast Next Page is about. Was this a product of COVID? How did you come about creating this show?
So because you couldn't perform live for so long, when things started realizing that, you know, I could put a show together, I'd realized I used to do concerts of my music all the time. I did one at Kennedy Center and 54 Below and in London, Australia, and I really was doing the concert and show song cycle route a lot. And I sort of had been focusing on writing Indigo, and I stopped doing that as much. So I thought over the summer would be a really fun thing for me because I have new songs that I've written and I have a new following. And I thought that if I could incorporate, you know, every concert I've done was very much like, I wrote this song when, or please welcome Liz Calloway and she's going to sing. It was all very, you know, here's my music. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was sort of funny kind of as I was talking to the audience or whatever, but it wasn't really the point of it. And I thought that there's a way to combine the idea of deflecting with humor through how I am as a person. And then you hear all of my music, which is really heartfelt and like there's a lot of emotion to them. And so I thought it would be fun to be snarky and funny as I'm talking about my own life, but incorporating it with my music, which sort of becomes my own memory. So I work so much virtually that a lot of times my students will get assigned, you know, connection unstable on Zoom. And it's when you can't connect, or when, you know, you freeze, or you can't do this. And every time I would start to have this like heart-to-heart or something, with this one student, it always said connection unstable. I said, that's ironic. I said, I think your computer has really like intimacy issues, because every time we start talking about something, it's like, no, I'm too unstable.
No.
So I thought it was a great title for a show, because all the songs I've written are about the human condition and communication in some form. And just the whole act of writing is about communicating. And we live in a world where we have to figure out new ways to do it. So
your songs are very heartfelt. With your new songs, have you brought the humor into the songs, like into the lyrics?
yeah, so it's funny you should say that, because I just met with my director a couple days ago right here, and I have this song. We had a whole set list, and I had a song I've written called Everyone Has a Vice, which I've written comedy songs, you know, most, like 4 or 5 out of dozens. But I had a funny one, and it's supposed to be a quartet, and I've only done it as a quartet. And, you know, I was singing through it, and one person is, you know, they shop too much, one person has anonymous sex, one person does drugs, you know, everyone has a vice. And as long as we don't let it control us, whatever. And that's the point of the song. And so my director was like, I think you should start the show, and you should play and sing that song by yourself. And I said, I'm not going to start a show being like, here's all the things that you know what I mean? They're not even my vices. I don't do those things. Well, not all of them. And he says, well, I think you should write a new set of lyrics about you and what you consider your vices to be, and somehow relate it. And I said, I can't do that. Because, by the way, I don't know if the two of you do this, but talk about Imposter Syndrome, which I know we'll talk about later. But the second there's something that someone says you're capable of, your instinct first is, nope, can't do it. You're wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill myself. Nope. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I sat down and I wrote a new set of lyrics, which I loved. And, you know, it's about social media and needing validation and just sort of the whole world we live in, where we post everything for strangers to care, you know. So I was able to incorporate more of my own humor, I think, into it. To answer your question.
Yeah, how do we listen to that song?
You watch my show on May 21st at 7 p.m.
Okay.
I'm
so
live streaming it too.
Yes. All right. Great. Well, we'll definitely put a link then to that, so that everybody else can see it. Because I mean, I'm unfortunately not in New York, and Todd's all the way in LA. So
the opening line though is, we all live behind a screen, all fighting to be seen. Every little detail we share, posting it so strangers will care. But the more you scroll, it takes a toll, and you start to feel like nobody's there. That is the opening.
Love that.
Yeah, and then it just goes on from there.
It's so like
it's vaudeville. The song is like da 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 dum. And so what I really wanted to do was, because my director also said, there's all these silent moments, like after the verse is over, it goes ba da da da, nobody's there, boom, and there's like a silentness. I'm a lyricist, can you tell?
No, it's
silent beat, and I put in one-liners. So it's basically start to feel like nobody's there, boom. Have you ever let your mind wander? You know, and then I would go into a one-liner, and then ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. So that's like the opening of the show, which I think kind of fits me perfectly. And then it goes into my other songs with other people singing them, you know.
Yeah, and it sounds like you kind of incorporate that, like, you know, Prince of Snarkness
in
there.
It's
so
humor.
It's like a part of your...
It's all about deflecting with humor. Yeah.
Yes. I think that is very healthy. Maybe I'm not a therapist, so don't
Mine
take
does.
what I say.
I'm in therapy 2 hours a week.
Oh, yeah, me too. And she thinks I'm hilarious, and that's all I need, really, is my therapist to tell me.
It's funny, though, because I get bored with things easily, and when I started doing, like, the one-liner thing, I said I need to do something else. So I started a series where I play, like, the sarcastic guy goes to therapy, and the therapist is equally as sarcastic. And there's a company, Just Salad, here in New York. They're a salad company. So they hired me, and I was doing like a video a month, basically eating their salad, but like doing these therapy scenes. And there was one where it was like, that joke came up, which is so real, but it's like, the therapist was like, so I think that you deflect with humor, and we need to deal with that. And I think I said something like, thank you. He's like, no, that wasn't a compliment. He was like, oh, I only heard that you thought I was funny.
Yeah. I heard a humor. I heard the word humor, and it worked for me. That's awesome. Well, so kind of getting back to, I guess, not so much your upcoming stuff, but what was like one artist that you were absolutely thrilled to get the chance to work with, and what would you say has been kind of your greatest accomplishment to date? I guess that's kind of a loaded question. You can
No, it's not. No, it's not. So it's a toss-up, but I think
it
I'm going to...
that?
It's Liz Calloway.
The brilliant Liz Calloway.
Broadway. The brilliant Liz Calloway. I was putting my first album together, and I was really grateful because I had Faith Prince sing something, and Liz Calloway, and some other really great people. And I remember when Liz was coming in to record the song, she wanted to call me on the phone the night before to talk about the lyrics. And I remember it was like, me, I just was starting and I was working with all these cool people, and Liz Calloway was going to call me on the phone to talk about the lyrics. And she was so kind and so wonderful and made me think so much. No other singer has done that who I've recorded with that way. And then when she showed up at the studio, she did 2 takes. We used the first one, 2. And she just wanted to do another one to have it. And then she ended up singing for me at 54 Below or something. But I think she was just really kind and generous and human. And I loved that about her.
Do you find that that's kind of like a rare quality with people in the business?
I will be honest, I am incredibly lucky. I have loved and developed friendships, some more than others, with everyone I've worked with. And I don't know what that is, but I've only worked with singers who wanted to be there, luckily. If someone doesn't like a song, they're not going to come in and do it. I haven't really had any situation with a singer or a performer or a big person in the business where I could leave it and say, oh, not one that I'm going to talk about here, but that came. I have had those interactions, but it wasn't somebody I was working with. It was someone I met or would meet. No, everyone's been really kind. Everyone's human. They just want to do the best they can do.
Well, I'm glad.
Everyone's a person.
Exactly. I'm glad that you've had that experience. I think that's a testament to you and the people you surround yourself with. And I think you can tell when a singer or performer is going to be kind off stage. Typically, you can, I think. But do you ever remember a time that a director, a colleague, a teacher, a family member made you feel like that you didn't belong, and did it by chance leave any lasting effect or trauma within you that affects you today?
Yes.
Hashtag therapy twice a week.
It's interesting. It's funny. You can always tell the people that are in therapy when they get asked questions like that. They're like, yep, talked about it Tuesday. Here's the deal. I was younger, and I had gotten an apprenticeship at the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival. And grant you, I was not in my most professional places of my life, and I think I went there more for relationship reasons and reasons that were not authentic to being there. The point is, I ended up being kicked out because I missed a class or something. And whatever. But the head of it basically talked to somebody very close to me and said, don't spend time with this person. They're a loser. They're never going to amount to anything. It wasn't directly to my face, but I was told about it after the fact, after I was kicked out. And, I think in some weird way, I have been proving that wrong to myself ever since. And there's been others, but that is a huge one for me because I thought they were right. And I didn't want that to be who I was. And, that the offset of that is being an overachiever or somebody who tries really hard to never be that. But that was a real traumatic sort of thing to hear about yourself.
And you feel like you're still trying to heal it today.
I think so. It's getting better, but
Well, I think that is like a very good lead-in to what you're talking about imposter syndrome. So you've talked a lot, and with other interviews and in your life kind of about trauma in general, but also your kind of battle with imposter syndrome. And you even wrote a song about it called Falling Every Day?
Failing Every Day is
even
just
better.
as appropriate.
Okay, I was about to say, I feel like you might want to
every day.
change the song title, and I just maybe...
You can credit Laura.
not to feed into your imposter syndrome, but I'm like really good at this. No, I'm just kidding. But did you know about imposter syndrome before you were like plagued by it yourself? And how do you handle it today?
You're starting to have a lot of success. And, for me, knowing you, it's been a long time coming. And I can't believe it's through this TikTok. And I just love it for you.
How long, neither one of us knows. But it's been a long time coming.
When do we meet? Where do we meet?
What do we mean?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So I think I was unabashedly confident when I first started writing, which is odd. But I did. I was fearless. I was 30 and I was having all of this attention and things were happening and started to win awards and started to do more things and get more recognition. And I went through a really, really traumatically toxic moment during all of that with a relationship. And the best way I can describe it is, once I was strong enough to sort of close the door on that and not be so hyper-focused on all of that chaos, because I was doing all the other things and my career was taking up at the same time, and I was really trying to manage these two dichotomies of reality, in a sense. And once I was able to close the door on all of that toxicity, things started to change. I met the producers for Indigo, Broadway producers for Indigo, person who was going to become my husband. Just you name it, it started to happen. And there's a disassociation that happens when you start to get all the things that you work for. And you start to feel like, well, why is this happening? And it's not really real, and people are just being nice. The more you achieve, the more you hold yourself up to certain standards, and you start moving the goalpost. For me personally, I'm just speaking for me. And I think what started to happen was I didn't understand why everything was working out. I didn't understand why all of the things I was doing, and this I don't say this with any conceit or pretense. I really mean it. When you look factually at what was happening to me, I didn't understand why all of this, why did, because you would tell the stories about people you would meet or opportunities I was being given, and it was all like, wait, just because you walked into a store, like it was all these moments like that really felt like I was disassociating, and people would start to be like, well, you don't deserve any of that. This is luck. People are being polite or people are being nice. And I think the more successful I started to get, the more the imposter syndrome started to form as a thing that I researched. And I started to second guess whether or not I could write songs. I started to, just, you name it, whatever experiences I was given, I was like, and then when social media started to happen and there was so much more attention. I was on a live one day talking to people, and I go live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, usually on TikTok for about an hour, and I just talk or write or whatever. And I was showing my music to people, and they didn't, and I said, I don't know if I'm even able to write a song anymore. And it sort of organically happened. I said, well, I think the best way to combat that is to write a song in front of 300 of you right now, or start to. And for the next week or two, I went live and I started writing the song. I ended up releasing it, and it's all about imposter syndrome, but it brought me into therapy because it was crippling. I always showed up. I always was successful. I always did the things well, but the fear of the failure, the fear of being made fun of, the fear of people being like, you're a fraud, the fear of people, realizing that you're the nothing that your psychological mind thinks you are is really scary. And you're the only one saying that to yourself. So it brought me into therapy to sort of figure out how to mitigate that.
It is the story we tell ourselves. Imposter syndrome is pretty, do you feel like you're in the process of overcoming or at least stopping the triggers for you? Like,
Yes.
Are you able to identify it? And do you think that that's actively happening?
I do. And it's a process and it's going to be a long one. But I honestly think that I made some realizations during therapy where I had to go to certain memories where disassociation, and I say that a lot, but that's sort of what it is. You disassociate from your own reality, from your own successes, from what other people have a perspective of you as.
So just understand it's like it's happening to him. It's not happening to me.
Right.
It's happening to that person, that my persona.
Or
it's happening to my persona.
Person, or that person is not me. Like that, I
Completely.
think that, because this is something I find fascinating because I suffer from imposter syndrome quite a lot, and it really, really hit its peak in law school, and it's very common for people that are high achievers. Intellectually, kind of in the higher levels of that, there's different kinds. There's they've got the superhero, the people that work themselves to make up for how inadequate they feel, or
overcompensating.
or perfectionism, or an expert kind of issue where you feel like you never know enough. And that was such a big thing in law school where I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. Everybody else knows 10 times more than I do. And then they don't really help you buy, the whole model doesn't really help that thought process because, the first thing they always joke, you've probably seen Legally Blonde, where they're like, look to your right and look to your left, half of you aren't going to be here at the end of this. And so it's very hard when you're in a big business like this, that, singing, composing.
Well, it's what happens is you start to forget your successes, right?
Oh, wow.
So the disassociation comes from, oh, you've won this award, you've won that award, you've
What's
had
next?
this, you've had this. And then each new thing, none of that is reality. None of that has happened to you. Like I wrote a song recently called Ghosts, which is in my show, but the second verse sort of is that. It says, we seem to take for granted all the things that we've been through. It's like someone else's story, but you can't remember who. And
I love that.
And so for me, it's like I have to constantly remind myself that I did certain things, which then in theory would give you that confidence to continue. But I think what happens is you do something and then you check it off the list because normally you're crippled with anxiety from it, and you do it, and okay, good. But the next time something happens, you're like, well, I can't possibly.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
you know,
Weirdly,
that's-
I have I am one giant goosebump right now, which, as Todd knows, is going to be the name of my first book. But, like that is, I've never heard it described that way. And that's exactly how I feel. Like I've never been able to pinpoint, like, it's not that I know I don't have a law degree or that I know that I'm not an attorney. It's just that, like, it's almost like that was somebody else that did that.
I have something called aphantasia, which I didn't know was a thing. I thought everybody had it. But it's the thing where certain people, when they close their eyes, they don't have images. They can't keep images in their head. And it's always been for me. That's why I'm so good verbally or with words and concepts, But if I were to close my eyes and you were to describe the most beautiful beach scene with specific, meditating, whatever, I would see nothing. I see complete blackness. And I think of things in concepts, like I know what an umbrella looks like and I know what this is, like I think the thoughts, but I can't see anything. And when I realized that not everybody was like that, with my therapist, I actually started to sort of associate that with disassociation, because when things happen and I live through them, they're there. But when I go back and think about them, I don't think about them in a real way because it's all very foggy.
So disassociation, imposter syndrome, and aphantasia, do you feel that is, when you get down to the nitty gritty, that it's just at the end of the day, we don't feel that we deserve this? We don't deserve this accolade. We don't deserve this success. Is that part of it? Or is it just its own?
I mean, I can only speak personally, right? I personally think that's a huge part of it. I think the feeling that you don't deserve the attention you get or the successes you get or what other people revere you for. I think that the idea that you don't deserve it is really ingrained because we live in a society that when we grow up, it is ingrained into us that we can be anything we want, that you can achieve, that you can do, that you can be successful in some way. That's what society teaches us. And it's true. The problem is when you get that, there's a fine line between society holding up your successes and with someone who knows how good they are or knows that they're the shit or knows that they're,
knows their
nobody
worth.
likes that. But nobody likes somebody to be so self-deprecating and so insecure that it's exhausting. And there's a balance there between owning your own self and confidence, but in a palatable way for society to still think that you are modest and endearing.
Humility.
Sometimes that paradox can completely shift your own thinking because it ingrains itself. We don't want to be the conceited jerk who just promotes themselves all the time and says how great they are. We don't want to be someone who's like, oh, I'm so awful and da-da-da-da, because then people think you're fishing for compliments. We want to sort of own our own truth, but in a way that is accessible for all of society who doesn't feel that way about themselves. It is a real mind shift, to be honest.
Yeah, I actually, that brought back like this flood of, and I'm sorry, I'm like, this is what happens. I start using our guests as therapists, but I had this
I'll invoice you.
Yes, that's fine. I get them all the time. But I don't usually pay them, but it'll be fine. I had this kind of flood of a memory of when I was in middle school. My family was relatively wealthy. Came kind of later in life, so I didn't really grow up with it. But I remember going to public, it was a charter school, a magnet school, and getting there and realizing, everybody else didn't have a lot of money because it's a charter school. People coming from all over. It's for intelligence. It's not necessarily your class or how much money you make. And so I kind of created this persona of not that I was I live in a trailer, but I just wouldn't talk about the fact that my family had money, and I wouldn't invite people over, and I wouldn't I wanted to keep that. I didn't want to be that different from everybody else. So it was kind of making myself smaller to fit in that very tight line you have to walk of.
But you just figured it out for yourself because it's that very way of thinking that festers, and as you get older, starts to fester into when you are successful, you're inclined to sort of suppress it in some way because you don't want to own it. And I think there's a lot of PTSD with that sort of way of thinking from then till now. And that's how imposter syndrome sort of develops.
Wow. Well, okay. Well, now we just solved a big mystery in my life. I'm going to fire my therapist.
Thank you, Scott.
I believe she didn't pick up on this.
You'd be surprised at how many people think I'm a therapist for when they start to follow me. They're like, "Are you a therapist?" And I was like, "No."
Maybe I should be, though.
Venmo at Scott Evan Davis, though. Life coach.
Yeah. Well, that would be 3 years of your life just gone because, like you said, you dive head first into it, so we wouldn't get any of your beautiful music. And now, a few words from our sponsors. Next page is sponsored by my restaurant, Bay Street Beer Garden. We're located in what was once an old train depot in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. Pretty cool, huh? Our bar and restaurant has beautiful high ceilings, communal tables, and German-influenced high-end bar fare, so it's as close as you can get to an authentic beer hall in the South. At our Bavarian-inspired and Southern-made restaurant, we're all about community, festivities, and uniting the old with the new. So go check out our website for updates on all the things, including live music, brunch parties, vendor markets, and all of our other upcoming events. We can't wait to see y'all! Next page is sponsored by Patrick Properties Hospitality Group. It's no secret that Charleston is one of the top wedding destinations in the world, and I'm thrilled to say Patrick Properties is the premier wedding and event company in the area. Since 1997, PPHG has unveiled 5 of Charleston's grandest properties and estates, faithfully restored and transformed into exquisite venues for special events. At Patrick Properties, we believe that moments matter, and our experienced team is committed to making each one extraordinary, with unrivaled service and professional expertise. So if you're looking for a classy venue for your next big event, check out Patrick Properties Hospitality Group on their website or social media. What advice would you give to your younger self, kind of knowing what you know now as far as that goes, or anything?
And all of your experiences, all your relationships, everything.
The biggest advice, and I've been asked this question before, and it's a hard one, but I think the biggest advice that I would give my younger self, because I also don't feel regretful or shameful, or I wouldn't change anything.
Well, that's good.
What I would say is, because everything happens the way it's supposed to, but I would say that if I could go back to my younger self, I would say to put less focus on trying to find the love that you were lacking or the family center that I didn't really have growing up in other people. Because if I had spent less energy trying to create and force these families that I could be a part of in these relationships or partners or whatever I was doing, that became central focus and everything else was extemporaneous. You know what I mean? I would say that it's going to work out. All of that will ease and you'll end up where you need to be. So for now, you should be focusing on yourself more, because I ended up focusing so much on the things that I was missing and needing to create for myself that I never gave 2 seconds on whether or not it was the healthy thing to do. And that's what I would change.
I can relate to that.
Exactly. I'm going to go a little bit bigger here with this next question. So what is your biggest fear when it comes to the state of our country, the United States of America? How do you see all of us moving forward in an era where it's still okay to pass bills called Don't Say Gay? How does this affect you as a member of the LGBTQA plus community?
I am a huge political junkie. I don't talk about it publicly anymore because I don't want to create that discourse just with what I'm putting out there. But In my own mind, I'm very fearful. I am horrified at the thought of having what we just came out of happen again, and this time even more emboldened. I'm scared of the audacity that seems to be normal now in politics. And I do believe that this particular country that we live in has a lot of hope and optimism if we let it. I think the new generation is very exciting because I think that there is a very huge awakening that I see happening, and I don't know when it's going to actually take hold, but I think that it's a brighter idea than maybe the darkness that I'm afraid of. But I do think that there's an openness that wasn't there a long time ago, and sometimes, you know, the whole "don't say gay" bill and everything. How can that happen right now? How could it be 2022, and how could that happen? And the truth is because those people are always going to be there. I just am hopeful that at some point we can, as a collective conscience, somehow understand that we are so manipulated by other countries, and what our politics becomes is so infused with lies on both sides that we just sort of have to sift through and own ourselves a little bit. And it scares me. It scares me. It's why I never want to leave New York City. At least,
or your apartment,
or my apartment, right?
Yeah.
At least I know that I support and understand sort of like the people that make the choices for me here in this city in a liberal way. I just kids are incredible, and I think all of these sort of anti-bills are going to suck. But I also think that it just creates more strength on the other side.
You know, we've talked about kind of a lot of that on the show is kind of the pendulum that happens when it's like, you know, when there's progress, then there's always going to be the people that come back harder the other way around. And it's so disheartening.
Well, look at Ukraine, number one. Who would have thought that would ever happen and we'd watch it? But more importantly, do you really think that we are that far from a Salem witch trials? The way that it happened, let's just say, if we really had that as an issue that people were bubbling over and there was disinformation and on both sides, do you really think that we're past doing some of those things that we know? And like the human nature doesn't change. Our laws change and our enlightenment changes, but you know, we all have to sort of, the pendulum does
and
swing.
History always repeats itself. So
I do think that I agree with you with the new generation. Like even Todd and I were talking about this because he judged this scholarship.
It's called a Young Distinguished Women's Scholarship Program. I'm actually going today to finish. They're going to present some more things for us. But these kids, Scott, I mean, you're teaching kids all the time, but it was my first time seeing these kids are juniors in high school, and just incredible the way that they see the world. And some of them actually were able to say to me, to my face, I identify with the LGBTQA plus community. And like at 16, 17 years old, like I would have never been able to have the courage or had the ability to say something like that. And then plus this new generation just calls stuff out that we were ingrained. We don't talk about that. Don't bring that up. So I share your admiration for this new generation.
I work with a lot of adults. I also work very heavily in the autistic community, but I also work with kids. And it's sort of a beautiful thing, you know, when you can work with a kid who's transitioning, you can work with another kid who's like, you know, I think I'm non-binary and that's just how I feel. And they're supported and they're loved and I don't mean every kid in every part of crevice of this country is going to go through that, but it is a really hopeful and beautiful thing to have such mature conversations with the younger people. I came out when I was 11, right? And, you know, I was before my time with how comfortable I felt in my own skin that way, because that's never been an issue for me, ever. But
and you had supportive family.
You know, I did, but it was more just an ingrained sense of knowing. Even if I didn't have a supportive family, I did. But even if I didn't, it wouldn't have changed how I viewed my own reality, you know? But I think the kids are going to teach them, and they will lead the way.
Yeah, and then we'll just
like
wait
that.
for the rest of them to die off. I think that's the key.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
we just recycle.
But there'll be more because those people have families and people that model after
unfortunately,
them.
they still have mouths and they can tell them things. But I do feel a lot of people that are in my, that are my staff are younger and they're beyond that high school age. But there's just such an openness. It's almost like an acceptance, like that's silly to even worry or like think about kind of these antiquated things. Like you can hear kind of like a what, like. What a ridiculous.
I just get so exhausted. I was like, this is what we're talking about. Let's talk about democracy. Let's
Yeah.
talk about whether or not we can vote.
Well,
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Sorry about the sirens, guys. I can't.
No, it's fine.
No, it's okay.
I
It's
feel
New
like
York
we're
City,
in New
you
York.
know?
Yeah.
I know. I'm
Yeah.
feeling you've set the scene very well. Like you dressed
you.
the set. It's all great. So I guess kind of going back to cautiously optimistic, that was your first work. We know that was
Yeah.
came from a dream. But what was like the message you were trying to get across with the work in its entirety? And do you think it was received the way you intended it to be?
I do. I think my first album was really about love and pain and toxic sort of things that I had been going through. And I've never really been the kind of person to like write a song about love. Now, I could write a song about a woman in a purple dress under an awning with a broken heel in a rainstorm and someone offering them an umbrella. Like, I could create characters, and that's how my mind works. So I was able to sort of infuse what I was feeling in a disassociated way by putting them into the mouths of characters that were not me. And I think it was received really well. I mean, I think my first album was trying too hard, and I think my second album was better. And I think my music now is a little bit different, but you know, I'm happy with I really love, I love my music. I do. And I really feel that people responded to it.
Don't go anywhere because we'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. Next Page is sponsored by Rogers, Patrick, Westbrook, and Brickman Law Firm, located in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. RPWB attorneys are experienced, respected, and tenacious. The common thread of their work is that they help those who have been wronged. They often lead class action lawsuits and multi-district litigations against large corporations. So they're the ones fighting the big guy. And people tend to notice. Their attorneys, including my dad and future guest, are highly regarded by both peers and adversaries, and were voted best law firm in 2021 in U.S. News and World Report. Their proudest moments are when they help ordinary, hardworking Americans who have been harmed through no fault of their own. So if you need attorneys with experience, innovation, and determination, give RPWB Law Firm a call or visit their website at rpwb.com.
Your music, Powerful Day, which was written with and for autistic children at PS 94 on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, it won the Musical Theater International's prestigious Courage in the Theater Award and then became the topic of a documentary called Spectrum of Hope. What inspired you to do this, and do you have a special connection to autism? Because you've mentioned it several times on the program.
So I was just basically working as a teaching artist, going to different schools and doing musical programs and working for Brooklyn Children's Theater and just working with kids a lot. And I got a call in from the hiring company that was 10, autistic students. They had been doing other shows, and they really wanted to write their own show. They had a story to tell, and they needed a composer, but also a teaching artist. So I interviewed, got the job, but I never worked with an autistic population before. And, I had my first session where I sat with my little journal in front of everybody and was asking them questions on what they wanted to write about. And they wanted a show about kids that were bullied in school and then got superpowers and overtook the bullies. That's what they wanted to write about. And this girl raised her hand and she looked out in the window and she basically said, I just want the world to know what we're capable of. I want them to know. And I wrote down, if the world only knew, on my little paper. And I went home and I wrote the song over that weekend and I taught it to them on Monday. I had no idea that song was going to be the biggest song of my career, but it's sung all over the world. And it's done at the Gershwin Theater every year. Kelly O'Hara, Chris Jackson, you name it, people have sung it. And that was sort of my first foray into working with that community. And then we finished that show 2 days before we opened that show. It was in an auditorium on the Lower East Side. In walks this older guy, and he was far away. And I was just trying to get my music, and we were about to do a run through. I was very nervous because Broadway World was there, and there was a lot of attention to it. And I was like, oh my God, that guy looks just like Sondheim. And he got closer and sat right in the front row, and I was like, oh my God, that guy is Sondheim. And then I had to basically take that information in, I love Sondheim, and realize that he was there sitting 4 feet away from me, and I'm going to go to the piano and start playing my songs. Mm-hmm. No pressure.
No pressure at all.
So I played If the World Only Knew, and I looked over and he was crying. Oh. And I ended up talking to him after, and we started writing letters. Actually, that's one of my letters from him right there. We started writing letters back and forth, but that was a really great thing. So from there, I did the documentary, And it became something, a really big passion of mine, to work with kids who were feeling unheard or needed more of a voice and representation. And at the time, there was none in theater. So I started thinking about a show called Indigo for a lot of different reasons, but it's about a non-speaking girl who's autistic, but there's also a grandmother with dementia and all these other family things that happen. And it's basically this girl who has a hard time communicating, teaches everybody else around her how to communicate. And that was the story I wanted to tell. And luckily I've gotten there, but it's taken a long time. But I think that first meeting with those kids, and I ended up being at that school for 5 years and creating this big program. And now I work with Epic Players, which is a professional neurodiverse theater here in New York. We just did a concert at Lincoln Center, and I love them dearly. And I'm developing Indigo, which is a dream of mine.
You are so passionate about, representation matters, and the young actress that is the star of Indigo happens to be autistic, correct?
Sure. When we did our last reading before the pandemic, it was really important to me and the creative team to do a national casting call to find Emma. And I wouldn't do it if she wasn't autistic. There was no way I was going to have somebody play it. And, we found her. She lives in Wisconsin. Her name is Madison Kopek. She's a genius. I guess I could say this now because we can announce it soon, but we are finally getting our world premiere production next May. And there's a couple of them.
Heard it here first.
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. We're going to go out and
This is
Dayton, Ohio, do it, and then I think possibly Seattle, but then coming back to New York. But there's a whole trajectory for it, and I'm very, very excited about it to sort of, we've only done readings, so I'm excited to see, because Emma, the character, she has synesthesia, which is where you see sound as color. And so she describes things in emotions and in color, but she also thinks in anagrams and jumbles words and communicates that way, and it's a lot of fun, and I'm very excited about people seeing it with all that technical aspects to it. I always said, someone said to me years ago, what's your definition of success? I said, for me, it's going to be having a show on a stage that I've written. I'll move the goalpost, but for now, that is a dream of mine. So
yeah, the second you do that, then it'll be like, who was that? And now what do I do? It was a ghost. I don't even remember. No, that sounds amazing.
Like, I was New Yorker of the Week a couple of months ago for my work with Epic Players, and I just think I have 98% of the friends and people in my life are, autistic or neurodivergent in some way, and I think that, I don't know, they're just my best friends, basically. And I'm very excited to be able to, or have the ability to, maybe give a little bit more representation specifically to females and specifically for female autistic performers.
I am a female, so I'll take it. But
but I'm excited. That's sort of how it organically happened. I never went into it, but life happens to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess I think, like, you clearly have a lot of different projects going on, some interviews, New York, Prince of Snarkness, all of it. So how do you still have time to write? And how do you make that happen? Do you have like a team of people that control some of not your writing, but your social media, all that stuff? Like how is
Yes. So my little dog,
the cat
Molly,
that I saw?
it's the dog. I have a cat and a dog, and they're pretty helpful. No, I don't have a team.
But they are your team. They are your team.
You are my team. I have been a freelancer and basically sort of working in my own path for very long. And it takes a very specific kind of, I think, brain to make that work for yourself. You have to really schedule your days. You have to figure it out. I write out of necessity. I've never been the kind of person, even when I had all the time in the world, to sit at the piano and just be like, I've had a bad morning, I want to write about it. I can't do that. I do write out of necessity. So for instance, like I'm doing this concert and I wanted to write a new opening and write this. When I'm working on Indigo, you have to structure your writing time. But I don't get up and write every day. I write when I have to, in a sense. And, I do my social media and I teach 24 students a week. I have a full virtual studio and rehearsals for Epic Players, and social media stuff takes up a lot of time too. So I think I just have to be really structured. I don't have a team. If anybody out there wants to be my team.
I was about to say, I think he's looking for interns. Assuming they're not.
Love an intern.
You get to be associated with the TikTok superstar. Yes. So anybody out there. Yeah, exactly.
Scott, how do you unwind? Is it with coffee?
No, no, that's when you wind. Coffee is not to unwind. Honestly, I'm not great, big surprise, at unwinding. I love reality television. I love sort of sitting back and scrolling and just doing nothing. Like, like everybody else. The day ends, we find something on Netflix that we can have on that is interesting enough to have on, but that we don't have to pay attention to, so we can scroll through our 4 platforms and on our phones and sort of just unwind and, and let the day go. I like doing that. I also sit and play the piano. I really do love to just sit and play.
But that's not when the songs are written. You're just
No, like Chopin or something.
I'm just
sort of
casually
teach myself
throwing
something.
some Chopin in there.
Like you do.
No big deal. Oh my God. Of course you have
I was
imposters
very
in
aware
there.
of how pretentious that was the second it left my mouth.
No, it wasn't pretentious.
Everybody does that to unwind. What are you talking about? I like Chopsticks. That's my favorite unwinding piano song. This has been absolutely amazing, but we do have a tradition on this show where we ask a question of the day, which we will later have to answer for ourselves. But
That was the reveal music.
no, reveal. I haven't said it yet. Considering that you have your
All right, you guys won.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
the TikTok, the Prince of Snarkness with his coffee cup. We thought, and now knowing how much coffee you do actually consume on a daily basis, which is a lot, guys. If you could have coffee with one person who is still living, who would that be and why?
I'm going to answer this, and there's only one answer. I mean, it's not even. And anybody who knows me has already answered this in their head. They're shouting it out right now if they're listening to this. But it's Barbra Streisand. She has been the driving force since I'm, I think, 12 for me, both as an inspiration, both as a human, both as the one person I've ever been truly obsessed with learning everything about. Like, there's nothing I don't know or heard, or it would be her. It would be her.
That's amazing.
I think she would love me. I think if I sat with her and had coffee with her, and that actually happened in my life, I think she would love me. I do.
I think we just put it out into the universe.
We would. I mean, yes, I think there would be a very familial feeling. That's what I think.
Just a quick little story about that. You might know Brian Nash. He's a pianist in New York.
Very, very well. He's a good friend of mine.
He played a private recital or concert that she did 3 songs at Lincoln Center in a very private room. It was about 30 people. And you have to tell him about this. But there was an interview portion afterwards, and the interviewer said, Barbara, your voice is incredible. You're you're belting, you're mixing, you're a soprano. Anything about your technique, or is this just God-given? And she goes, what is a mix? So every time
I've never had a voice lesson. What's a mix?
What is a mix? And so Brian and I, whenever we see each other, we go, what is a mix? So yeah, Barbara, I think Barbara would love you, Scott.
Oh, I think so too. Let's go tell her. Let's send this to her.
Everyone, let's do a hashtag Scott meet Barbara.
Yes, we're going to have a full-fledged campaign to make this happen. I think that's what this is going to take. Or you could literally just, walk outside your apartment right now and she could just appear, because it seems like that's a theme in your life.
True. I mean, if I think about her hard enough, I'm sure she'll be at the bodega.
Yes. Oh, at the bodega. Gosh, I love you New Yorkers. We need some bodegas down here.
Yeah.
Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure.
You guys too. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
This has really been amazing, and we've enjoyed learning. I've learned about aphantasia, which I didn't know, which I actually thought was what you referenced later on, which is seeing colors with numbers, because
synesthesia.
So I have synesthesia when it comes to numbers. It's very bizarre.
You see numbers as color?
Yes.
Oh,
So you think it would help with math. It does not. If anything, I'm just no, that's yellow. What are we talking about?
It's funny. I also have dyscalculia. I know we have to go, but dyscalculia is where you have dyslexia, but with numbers. So I have that as well. But seeing colors as numbers or numbers as colors is fascinating. But no, aphantasia, you see nothing. It's boring.
What did you just call it?
Dyscalculia.
Okay,
so if someone says take 327 plus 16 and without paper, and I'm going to try to, the numbers literally they will not stay in place, and I forget them. I have to look. It must be what when people have dyslexia with letters. I don't have it with letters. I'm great with letters, but with numbers, that's why I failed math.
I think I have this. You don't know me very well, but I am a huge hypochondriac, so I will make sure I don't have this before the end of the day. But it could explain a lot of things.
I wish I could see your Google search after this was over.
Oh, it's yeah.
I have.
I really need to just clear my history every single day, and it's not for anything like it's nothing nasty. It's just like embarrassing.
Just forward your history to your therapist.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Just like, these are the things we need to talk about.
Everything in my Google search.
Yeah, just let's talk about my Google search, okay? This is what's gonna happen. Well, we had an awesome
Incognito.
time. Yeah, exactly.
It was great.
Yeah, this was so much fun, and
Before we go, sorry, keep Scott, how can people find you?
Oh, it's Scott Evan Davis as one word, no spaces, no capitals, on everything. My website is scottevandavis.com,
All right.
Yeah, we'll have everything in our show notes for everybody. Everybody go check it out. If you haven't subscribed or followed him on Instagram or TikTok,
Thank you.
He's really hurting for followers right now. So if you could just
I need
get
the
on there and help
validation.
him out. It's bad. It's really bad. No, he's hysterical. We've had an awesome time. We really can't thank you enough. So
Until next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Scott.
all right, bye.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, whoa.
He's just you know what I love the most about Scott is that he's not just funny. He's like so real. Like that he's just open, and that I don't know. I related to him on so many levels. I just
You did. You were having some epiphanies.
straight
during that.
up solved some life problems, I think, during that interview. So I owe him I need to send him some flowers or something, because it was an eye-opening discussion, and I think that a lot of people are going to be able to relate to it because like we keep saying, nobody is impervious to dealing with issues, even if they are the biggest composer, writer, actor, whatever.
TikTok star, We
I'm
talked
just-
about dissociation, imposter syndrome, aphantasia, which I had no idea. You didn't even know about that either, right? Do you remember the last one? He said it was a
synesthesia or something like that. Seeing letters and numbers and stuff as colors and things like that.
which is what Indigo is basically about.
I really like just even the fact that he works with autistic kids. I have affected by that in a lot of ways as far as family members and friends. And I think people that are involved with it know a lot about it, but if you don't, then you're kind of separated from it. So I love that he's bringing it to a show.
Well, that story he told about the young girl who said, I just want people, if they only knew what we were capable of, the young autistic girl that said that. And then he wrote the song, If the World Only Knew.
He's just so intelligent. And he has a lot to, I think I love the fact that he helps so many people to get that message out, that they are worthy people too.
Right. He was one of those people in New York that I met. We still don't know where we met or how we met.
Don't know how.
But when I did meet him, I remembered Scott. I don't remember the moment I met him, but I remembered Scott, and we've kept in touch over the years, and he's just been such a constant source of inspiration. And then when I noticed that his social media following was just exploding, I know he has talked about his own traumas and his own, imposter syndrome, so we both thought he would be a great guest. He surely proved to be just that. And
imposter syndrome is very personal. That's what's so kind of not sad, but what's hard about it is that you've known for so long that he's destined for greatness, because he has that personality, and he just
has a light around him, like an aura. And I think that his snarkness works because people can tell that he's not a giant asshole. Do you know what I mean? I think that's why it plays so well, and that it resonates with so many people. But yeah, I'm so glad that he came on the program.
Thank you for hooking that up.
Oh,
because you made the dream happen.
Well,
so
you can find him on all of our platforms, nextpagepodcast.com. Also, you can check it out on our Instagram. We're going to have, all of our guests on there, and go to scottevandavis.com, and that's his TikTok and his social media. I mean, I'm so thrilled that we are doing this together, and I think we are. Actually, I hope for all of you listeners out there, I speak for Laura and myself when we say we hope that some of this resonates with you, and maybe someone that you could say, I heard this conversation, you might want to take a listen to this, because I think that's why we're doing what we're doing, right, Laura?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that this is all about kind of making people feel less alone with what they're going through, especially with other people that you see as kind of on this ivory tower sometimes of, that they're live these perfect lives, but they've also gone through any number of things. And then it's always really awesome to see like how they overcome it and like how, like, I just think that this podcast, what I hope it to be, is like the real Cinderella story for people. Like that it's not the, the prince coming to save you, but that it is kind of a hopeful that you can come back from anything. And
100%. There's always going to be a rainy day, but the sun will come out, It's
sun will come out. I should not ever sing on here ever. Like, that's so, cut that out. We had all these amazing.
That made me so happy on so many levels to hear you say. Good morning, everybody.
Like, not even on key.
That's all right.
Oh God.
Right.
Well, that's why we have I reserve that for you, and you just don't do it enough. So you're gonna force me to be singing.
All right, Laura.
Well, we do need to ask each other a question of the day.
Right. That is
yes. Right. So who would you have coffee with living to this day? I guess we can't go history.
Right. I've been really, really trying to think about this since we asked Scott, and I am torn because there's so many people. I just have so many questions. But
we have this podcast.
Exactly. I think I would love to sit down with, honestly, and I think you're gonna maybe think this is weird, but I know this might sound cliche, but I want to talk to Oprah, but I don't want to talk to Oprah.
Stop it.
Listen, I don't want to talk to Oprah. You gonna say Oprah too?
Did you literally steal my answer? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No.
Go ahead. No, it's fine.
I
just gotta think of another one.
But I don't want to talk to her about her being Oprah, like the brand. I want to talk to Oprah about when the cameras are off. Because I feel that there is, she's so on all the time, and I just wonder what she's like, with Gail or with Stedman when the cameras aren't there, when she can just have a glass of wine and chill. That's the Oprah that I want to get to know, because everything else is, and yes, she is amazing and she's very polished and professional and all of those kinds of things. But I just think she would be fascinating because she's interviewed so many presidents and so many, psychopaths and so many amazing, you know what I mean?
Could be the same, but whatever. Yeah.
And I wonder if she still does interviews, but I wonder if she misses her show. I wonder if she misses that whole Chicago life.
Well, in some sort of historical, monumental way, we have come up with the same answer instead of me having two answers and all of that. But I 1,000% agree. Like, I would just love to talk to her, not about like, world peace or anything, but like literally like what her life is like and how she balances things, how she processes, like kind of how we talked to Omar Torres, the therapist, about when he leaves a therapy session, like how long does it take for him to like decompress. And it's like, I feel like she is on all the time. So like how does she do that?
I know because I stalked her a little bit online that she has a full prayer room that she goes into every single morning before she starts her day. And she sits there in prayer at sunrise every single morning, and she journals. And I think that her keeping herself grounded, and she talks about everyone around her, she calls it the noise. The noise, silencing the noise. I wonder what she's like at like a family barbecue.
But see, like, I would rather know, like, I want to see her drunk, I want to.
Exactly.
I want to give her some shots, because it's like, of course she goes into her prayer room every morning at sunrise. Like, like she's Oprah. She's like the best. But I want to know, what, did she ever not feel like the best? Does she ever not want to go to her prayer room in the morning? There's just, that's the kind of like the human level that I want. I've also always dreamed of going to her show. And then, of course, it ended. So, that's, I'll take coffee. I can't go to her show. I'll take
the same person. That is so cool.
I know. I literally have it. It's not even like I'm lying. I had it written down.
I have it right here, too.
We can confirm that this was not, there it is. We can confirm this was not some sort of crazy whatever.
Right.
We did it.
Everybody go check out Oprah. Go check out Scott Evan Davis. And
go check out our pages.
Yeah, Next
go
Page
follow
podcast.
Us.
Yeah, help.
Help us. We need to get to at least 500,000 followers by
exactly
by the time this airs, so that we feel on the same level as Scott.
Exactly.
But this was super fun. I love seeing you all the time. So, and until next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.